Okay, let's get started and complete our Session 5 lecture notes. Remember, when we start on our lecture notes, we will first watch this video and second, make sure that we access the lecture notes and make a copy. Now, I'm not going to specifically lecture you, but I'm going to outline for you where in the textbook you should be putting your effort, and hopefully this is going to help you go through the book, read and reread, and summarize the important items that I want you to pull out of this chapter. So for starters, let's talk about diverse parenting. Now, diverse parenting literally means multiple ways to parent. We parent in numerous ways, and our parenting comes from our experiences as children. Now, a lot of the ways that we particularly parent have to do with some of the 3 theories of sociology. So, as a reminder, structural functionalism, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism all have a spot here. Let's think about this. How is the family structured? That has a lot to do with how parenting occurs. Genetics of the parents have a lot to do with how they choose to parent their own children. The socioeconomic status or the social class that the family is in affects parenting and parenting styles. Some parents perceive that there are external expectations laid upon them, and then that forces them to make certain parenting decisions because they are concerned about what others may think of them. The type of family support given to a set of parents have a lot to do with the style of parenting that occurs in the home. Where the family unit is geographically located also bears on the type of parenting that occurs in the home. And finally, the control or the conflict within the home affects the parenting styles as well. So if we're going to get started, I would suggest that as we move forward, you take some time and pause this video as you complete your notes, instead of watching the video all the way through and then going back and trying to complete. So if you haven't already read through the assigned portions of Chapter 12, I would definitely recommend pausing the video and doing that now. To get started with the notes, let's first talk about the first section of the notes. So the question or main ideas on the left-hand side will help us find where we're supposed to be in the text. And we'll see the nature of parenting choices that begin on page 254 in your textbook. What you're going to want to do here is identify the 5 types of parenting choices that are listed in the text. Don't just identify each one of the 5, but reread that small paragraph and summarize it in your own words to further explain what each one of those nature of parenting choices mean. Paying close attention to one of the vocabulary words on page 255, you will reread the explanation of what concerted cultivation is, and you will put that here on the right-hand side of your Cornell notes. Now, here comes a reflection question. Your reflection will be written in the right-hand side. Remember, nothing is written in the left-hand column. You're only writing on the right-hand side. And your reflection goes inside of this gray box right here. So, reflecting back on the 7 basic parenting choices on pages 256 and 257, you're going to put in your reflection of which one of those choices do you see as most important and explain why you feel that way. Moving now to page 258, read through the Transition to Parenthood section. Summarize what you learned in the Transition to Motherhood section, making sure that you are addressing the bolded vocabulary words in the text as well. You will do the same thing, summarizing and making sure that you are addressing the bolded vocabulary terms in the text for the Transition to Fatherhood section found on page 260 and 261. Now, when we look at the next reflection question, we see it ask, which outcome for children with involved fathers do you agree with? Do you most agree with? On page 261, you will see a chart. It is sort of pink, sort of purple and white, and it lists the outcomes for children that have involved fathers. So you're going to read over that and decide which one of those outcomes do you most agree with and why. The 6 basic parenting roles are located on page 262 and 263. Again, you are going to not only identify what those 6 parenting roles are, but you are going to summarize what they mean in your own words. The reflection question asks you to determine which parenting role you feel is most important and explain your answer. Now, beginning on page 264, we are going to address some vocabulary terms. You'll see on page 264, it starts with helicopter parents, and you will continue to go through until you reach the end of the section that finishes at the very top of 266. The theories of child rearing have a small section that you will read in your textbook on 266. And then these theories are very thoroughly addressed in table 12.1 on page 266 as well. There are 5 of them. Make sure that you identify each and then summarize what they mean to you. Moving into our final section, we are going to start on page 273 in the single parent issues section. Now, there is certainly nothing wrong with a single parent household. I myself have raised my daughter for a time period as a single parent in a single parent household. And while that may not have been the most perfect scenario that I would have wished for myself and my daughter, we made it work. However, there are issues that single parents face, and it is very important to be aware of those issues as we analyze how they affect society and how they affect parenting and how they affect the children that are within those homes. Make sure that when you read the section, you are also including special bolded vocabulary terms in your notes. Reading the section Challenges Faced by Single Parents, which start on page 273 and go to page 274, you will address each one of those challenges and then summarize it in your own words. Finally, once you have completed those notes, here are 3 summary questions that I want you to reflect on. The first one asks, why is parenting important to the family unit? So just imagine that you have a household with parents and children and there's no parenting going on. I would imagine there would be quite a bit of chaos. Remember back to those first few weeks when we talked about the importance of family and family unit. So think about here why the parenting is so important to the family unit and explain thoroughly. You definitely need more than 1 sentence in the summary section. The second question asks, what experience in your childhood has or will affect your style of parenting? So in the journal this week, we watched a video about different parenting styles. I'm sure that brought back some memories of how your parents parented you. So what experiences do you remember in your childhood that will affect or has affected your style of parenting? What will you do the same? What will you make sure that you do different? And finally, the third reflection question in the summary section asks you what important factors should be considered before deciding to become a parent. So what are some things that we should think about? What are some things that we should analyze prior to deciding to become parents? Are there things that we should already have in place before we decide to become a parent? Remember that as you go through this lecture, let me know if you have questions.